You have used an operating system that is not Windows, not macOS, not Linux, and not Android, probably this week. If there is a PlayStation in your house, its operating system is a fork of FreeBSD. If you own a first-generation Google Nest Hub, Google replaced its operating system in 2021. It swapped a Linux-based system for a from-scratch microkernel Google wrote itself. The update contained no user-facing changes. Nobody was told. In the next 14 minutes, you will understand what is actually running on those devices, the 3 ways an operating system can be built, and which of these you could install today. Start with why the usual list is wrong. Windows, Mac, Linux. That is not a list of operating systems. It is a list of consumer products that reached retail. The engineering question is different, and there are only 3 real answers to it. The first is a monolithic kernel. Everything runs together in one privileged space. Drivers, file systems, networking, memory management, all of it. Calls between those parts are fast because nothing has to cross a boundary. The cost is that a bug anywhere is a bug everywhere. A bad driver takes down the machine. Linux is monolithic, so are the BSDs. The second is a microkernel. The kernel does almost nothing. It handles memory, scheduling, and passing messages, and that is close to the entire job. Drivers, file systems, and network stacks all run as ordinary user space processes with no special privileges. When a driver fails on that design, a process dies. The system restarts it and keeps running. The cost is that every operation those components used to do directly now requires messages back and forth through the kernel, and that overhead is real. The third is a hybrid, which is what Windows NT and macOS both use. Microkernel structure on paper, with performance-sensitive parts pulled back into the kernel in practice. That first argument was not academic. In 1992, Andrew Tannenbaum, who wrote the Minix teaching operating system, posted a message titled "Linux is obsolete." His position was that monolithic kernels were a step backward, and that any serious operating system built in the 1990s should be a microkernel. Linus Torvalds argued back, at length, in public. Tannenbaum was arguably right about the architecture. Torvalds was right about what would actually get built and shipped, which turned out to matter more. 30 years later, the argument is quietly resolving in a way neither of them predicted. Microkernels did win, just not on desktops. They run inside the secure enclave of your phone, inside automotive controllers, and inside the newest system on this list. Now the actual systems, starting with the one you already own. FreeBSD is a direct descendant of the Berkeley Unix line. It is not a Linux clone, and it never was. Both trace back to Unix separately. The structural difference matters. On Linux, the kernel comes from one project, and everything around it comes from hundreds of others, assembled by a distribution. FreeBSD develops the kernel and the core system together in one repository as one product. There is no distribution layer because there is nothing to assemble. Then there is the license. The BSD license lets a company take the code, modify it, ship it inside a product, and never publish a line of what they changed. That is why Sony built the PlayStation 4 operating system on FreeBSD 9, and why the PlayStation 5 runs a fork of FreeBSD 11. Sony ships tens of millions of FreeBSD machines into living rooms and owes the project nothing but an acknowledgement in a license file. Netflix runs its video delivery servers on it for the same reason. When Linux is not the answer at that scale, this usually is. You can install FreeBSD on a laptop today. It works. Hardware support is narrower than Linux, and you will do more setup. OpenBSD forked from NetBSD in 1995 under Theo Dorot, and it has exactly one obsession: correctness through auditing. Developers read the source line by line looking for defects, continuously, as a normal development activity, rather than a response to an incident. That project produced OpenSSH. If you have ever connected to a server remotely, you used their code. It ships inside Windows now. An operating system almost nobody runs wrote the tool that everybody runs.
Illumos is what survived of Open Solaris. Sun Microsystems open-sourced Solaris, Oracle bought Sun, and Oracle closed the source again in 2010. The community forked what had already been released and kept going. That lineage carries two things worth knowing: ZFS, the file system with checksums and snapshots, and dtrace, a tracing system for inspecting a running production machine without stopping it. Both were invented at Sun. Both were good enough that other operating systems spent years porting or re-implementing them. Illumos is not a desktop. It is storage and server infrastructure, and it is still in production use. Haiku is the strangest project on this list, and the most impressive. B Incorporated built BOS in the 1990s as a desktop operating system designed around responsiveness in media. Palm bought B in 2001 and killed it. Users were left with software and no operating system to run it on, so a group started rewriting the entire thing from scratch. They are still doing it. The project began in 2001 and has been in beta for more than 2 decades, but it works. It boots, it has a real desktop, and the 32-bit builds run unmodified BIOS applications from the 1990s. That is a from-scratch operating system written by volunteers that achieved binary compatibility with a commercial product that has been dead since 2001. ReactOS is attempting the same trick against a much larger target. It re-implements Windows NT at the binary level so that Windows drivers and Windows applications run on it natively. Compare that with the approach in the last video. Wine re-implements the Windows programming interfaces and runs them on top of Linux. ReactOS re-implements the operating system underneath instead. No Linux anywhere. It has been an alpha for over 2 decades.
Technically, it is extraordinary. Practically, do not put it on a machine you need. Fuchsia is the one with real money behind it. Google published it in 2016. It is not Unix, it is not Linux, and it does not try to be. Its kernel is called Zircon, and it is a microkernel with capability-based security, meaning a process can only touch what it was explicitly handed. Bloomberg reported that Google intended Fuchsia to replace Android. It launched in May 2021 on the first-generation Nest Hub, replacing a Linux-based system with no user-facing changes at all. Years of engineering on a brand-new kernel, shipped silently to a bedside smart display. So which of these can you actually use? FreeBSD, yes. It is a real desktop if you are willing to do the setup, and derivatives exist that do most of that for you. OpenBSD, yes, but be honest about the target. It is excellent as a firewall or a small server, and it is austere as a daily desktop. Haiku, yes, as a working curiosity. It boots on real hardware, and the available software is limited. Illumos, only if you are building storage infrastructure. ReactOS in Fuchsia, no. One is alpha software, and the other ships only on hardware Google chose. Now, the pattern worth noticing. Not one of these failed on engineering. Illumos carries file system technology that Linux spent a decade catching up to. Haiku achieved something almost nobody attempts and succeeds at. Zircon is a serious modern kernel. And this is the part that makes them worth your attention, even if you never install one. The systems nobody runs keep producing the technology everybody runs. OpenSSH came out of OpenBSD. It is now the standard way to reach a remote machine on every platform, including Windows. ZFS came out of Sun and survives through Illumos. It is now the file system serious storage administrators reach for on Linux and on FreeBSD. dtrace came out of the same place, and the pressure to match it shaped how Linux built its own production tracing tools. FreeBSD shipped jails in 2000. It lets you run isolated environments on one kernel, each with its own file system view and network identity, without a virtual machine. That is the container concept, working in production more than a decade before it became the standard way to deploy software.
None of those projects captured the market they were competing in. All of them changed the systems that did. Application developers target the platforms that have users, which is exactly how the two systems on this list that did reach you got there. Sony put FreeBSD in your living room by putting it inside a game console. Google put Zircon on by pushing it as firmware update to a device you already owned. Neither of them asked. Neither of them mentioned it. An operating system does not reach you because it is good. It reaches you because it arrived inside something you bought for another reason. Subscribe. Pseudo-bit logic is just getting started.